Today, I bought a huge number of screwdrivers, starting with a 10-cent option, then a $1 tool, $5, $10, $25, $50, and even a screwdriver that costs $100. All of these candidates will go through a full set of tests and compete against each other to find out which one is actually the best. Let's start with the cheapest purchase, the one that costs 10 cents. Surprisingly, this is not a screwdriver at all. For this price, the best thing we were able to buy was the cheapest screwdriver bit available, and even then we had to persuade the seller to give us a discount. The first parameter in our table is packaging and contents. The bit was sold in a simple cardboard package. Inside there was nothing except the bit itself. For packaging and contents, we give it a very generous 2 out of 10. Next, let's take a look at quality. At first glance, the bit looks completely ordinary and nothing stands out. The only thing we can really test here is the strength of the metal. We squeeze it as hard as possible with pliers and look at the result. After the test, the metal shows clear deformation and deep scratches, which makes it obvious that the quality here is extremely poor. There are no features at all, and we can't perform the remaining tests, so the rest of the table is filled with zeros. As a result, the 10-cent candidate managed to score only 4 points. Of course, expecting anything more for this price wouldn't make much sense. Now we move on to the $1 category. For this amount of money, we managed to buy a manual screwdriver handle. Let's see what exactly we get for $1. There was no packaging at all, only a store tag attached to the tool. We cut the zip tie and remove it. Honestly, this type of packaging is even worse than what the previous candidate had. So for the first parameter, we give it only 1 point. This handle looks exactly like what you would expect for its price. On one hand, it pleasantly surprised us with a rubberized grip. On the other hand, it disappointed us with a slight bend in the shaft. However, the connector here is magnetic and holds the bit quite well. For quality, we give it 3 out of 10. As for features, the only things worth mentioning are the rubber grip and the magnetic connector. There's nothing else here. So for features, we give it 2 points. Next comes the power test. For this test, we take a piece of hardwood and a long screw. In this test, everything depends on my physical strength. The deeper the screw goes in, the higher the score. Let's start tightening. The first few centimeters went in almost without resistance, but as soon as the screw went deeper, every turn became harder, and after a couple more centimeters, it completely stopped. Driving large screws with this tool is clearly not realistic. For power, we give it 2 out of 10. Now let's imagine that we need to connect these two boards using 10 screws and do it as fast as possible. Let's see how quickly a $1 screwdriver can handle this task. We start the stopwatch and begin turning. With small screws and softer wood, the tool performs a bit better, but it's still uncomfortable to use, and I regularly have to stop and rest. We drive in the last screw and stop the stopwatch. The final time is 10 minutes. That's about 1 minute per screw, which is way too slow. For speed, we give it 3 points. Next is the drilling test, but it's impossible to mount a drill bit here, so this test gets 0 points. The same score goes for the battery test, since there is no battery at all. Now we move on to the final test. Most often, screwdrivers are used for assembling furniture. Let's imagine that we bought a new chair and decided to assemble it using this manual handle. The first advantage is complete silence. You definitely won't bother your neighbors with this tool. Also, the screws go in slowly, which reduces the risk of damaging the material. But since this is a manual tool, I got extremely tired, and this drawback outweighs all the advantages. Still, assembling the chair with a $1 screwdriver was possible. For this test, we give 5 out of 10. We count the scores. The $1 candidate scored a total of 16 points. Now we increase the price and move on to the $5 category. It's time to see what we managed to buy here. The packaging says that this is a manual screwdriver, and it even comes with 33 bits. The tool arrived in a transparent plastic case, which is really nice. We open it and see all 33 bits neatly placed in a built-in holder. There are different bits, different extensions, and of course the screwdriver itself. The kit includes almost everything you might need, and the packaging leaves a very good impression. So for packaging and contents, we give it 7 points. When we pick up the screwdriver, we're surprised by its size. It's very small. The plastic feels dense, but we're not quite sure which hand this handle is designed for, because only 2 fingers fit comfortably. The locking mechanism wobbles slightly, but the ratchet mechanism works smoothly without jamming. The connector is magnetic, so the bits won't fall out. The bits themselves turned out to be not too bad. The quality here is noticeably better, so we rate it 4 out of 10. As for features, we have a magnetic connector, a ratchet mechanism, and an unusual case with a bit holder. For features, we also give it 4 points. Now let's move on to the power test. We drive a screw into a log. It goes in fairly well, but the deeper it goes, the harder the process becomes, and eventually the screw stops. Compared to the previous result, this manual screwdriver managed to drive the screw deeper. The ratchet mechanism and the handle make the process easier, allowing me to apply force for longer. For power, we give it 3 out of 10. Next, let's check the working speed. We start the stopwatch and drive 10 screws into the boards. My hand gradually gets tired, but the ratchet helps a lot. The final time is 7 minutes. It's slightly better, but still not very fast. For speed, we give it 4 points. The drilling and battery tests are skipped. Now let's try assembling a chair using this manual screwdriver. The advantages remain the same: low noise level, precise control, and help from the ratchet. The tool handled the task better than the previous candidate, so for real-world use, we give it 6 out of 10. The $5 candidate scored 28 points in total. This is definitely a tool I would actually use. For $10, I finally managed to buy an electric tool. This is the cheapest cordless screwdriver on the market, and it's interesting to see what it can surprise us with. The tool arrived in a simple cardboard box, but in addition to that, there was also a black carrying case, which we immediately opened. Inside, we find the user manual, a single bit, a basic charger, 1 battery, and the screwdriver itself. That's the entire package. We rate the packaging and contents at 7 points. Now let's take a closer look at the tool itself. The body is made of cheap plastic, but there are rubber inserts to prevent the hands from slipping. The screwdriver is quite lightweight. The trigger responds adequately and ramps up speed gradually, although there are slight jerks during acceleration. There is a built-in work light for dark areas, a reverse mode, and torque adjustment, which works more or less correctly. However, there is some play in the battery as well as in the chuck, although it still holds the bit properly. The quality here is average, so we give it 5 out of 10. As for features, we can highlight the work light, reverse mode, and torque adjustment. For features, we give it 5 points. Now let's move on to the power test. Here, everything already depends on the tool itself. This is a 12-volt screwdriver, so I'm not expecting too much from it. The screw starts confidently, but then stops, just like before. Even the cheapest electric screwdriver showed better results than all the previous candidates. For power, we give it 4 out of 10. Next, we assume that the speed test results will be noticeably different. We start the stopwatch and drive 10 screws into the boards. I managed to do this in just 55 seconds, which is 10 times faster than the previous tool. For speed, we give it 7 points, which is an excellent result for this price. Now we move on to the drilling test. We will use a universal drill bit suitable for most materials. We take a wooden beam, a brick, and thick metal. We start with the wooden beam. The screwdriver handles it almost without effort. When drilling into brick, the motor struggles and sounds like it's choking, but we still manage to make a hole. Metal turns out to be much more difficult. The tool is only able to slightly penetrate the surface, and a full hole cannot be made. For soft materials and household tasks, it's enough, but for metal, the power is clearly insufficient. For drilling, we give it 7 out of 10. Now let's move on to furniture assembly. The screwdriver easily drives small screws, and the torque adjustment helps avoid over-tightening and damaging the furniture. The compact size allows us to work even in tight spaces. The chair is assembled without any problems. For real-world use, we give it 7 points. Now let's move on to the battery life test. Before the test, the battery was fully charged. We placed the screwdriver on the table and locked the trigger at full throttle using a zip tie. Under these conditions, the tool ran for 22 minutes. It's important to note that this is under no load. In real use, the runtime will be shorter. So for autonomy, we give it 5 out of 10. The total score for the $10 screwdriver is 47 points. To be honest, we expected to get cheap junk that would fall apart in our hands for this price, but it turned out to be quite the opposite. This tool is far from perfect, but for its price, it performs surprisingly well. By paying an extra $15, we purchased another model from the same brand, which is supposed to be a 16-volt screwdriver. The tool is sold in a 2-color case with a bright, colorful sticker on the front. Let's do the unboxing. First, we are greeted by paperwork, a charger, and 2 16-volt batteries. And of course, the screwdriver itself, but the package doesn't end there. By opening a small compartment in the case, we find a real treasure. Various bits, several drill bits, sockets, and a flexible extension shaft. For packaging and contents, we give it 9 points, and I think you'll agree with us here. Now let's take a look at the build quality. Visually, this screwdriver looks different from the previous one and resembles an impact driver. The plastic is roughly the same quality, with anti-slip inserts on the handle. The weight feels comfortable and not much heavier than the previous model. The trigger response is more accurate, and the sound of the motor inspires confidence. There is a bright work light and a battery charge indicator. You can enable reverse mode, adjust the torque, and there is also a gear selector with 2 speeds, fast and slow. The battery locks in securely. The chuck has almost no play and it's made of metal. There are no complaints about the quality, so we give it 7 points. The new features here are the speed selector and the battery indicator. For features, we give it 6 out of 10. Now it's time to test the power of this screwdriver. We run the test in first gear to fully reveal the tool's capabilities. The screw goes in very quickly and you can clearly feel the claimed 16 volts, although it falls just short of fully driving the screw in. So far, this screwdriver is the leader in this test. For power, we give it 7 points. Now let's check the working speed. Driving 10 screws took only 30 seconds and the tool handles the task extremely well. For speed, we give it 8 out of 10. Next comes the drilling test. There are no issues with work. The hole is drilled in just a couple of seconds. Brick is drilled more slowly, but the motor works without excessive strain, and the hole is successfully made. Metal creates a more serious load, but the drill bit gradually makes its way through and completes the hole. For drilling, we give it 8 points. Now let's assemble a chair using this screwdriver. There is enough power, the screws go in quickly, and the size and weight of the tool do not interfere with the work. The assembly is completed without any problems. For this test, we give it 9 points. Now let's check the battery life. The battery is fully charged. We lock the trigger with a zip tie and wait until the motor stops. After just 7 minutes, the battery is completely drained. However, there are 2 batteries included and the voltage is higher, so in real-world use, it will be possible to complete more tasks. For autonomy, we give it 6 out of 10. The total score for the $25 screwdriver is 60 points. The price difference compared to the previous candidate is not that big, but in real work, this tool performs significantly better. This screwdriver is worth every cent. We had already unpacked 2 screwdrivers, and then I remembered a trending video. In that video, several connected screwdrivers are turned on, and they look like they're fighting each other. It looks very spectacular, so we decided to repeat the experiment. To do this, we connect the tools together using an extension. After that, we lock the druggers with zip ties, and then simply insert the batteries at the same time. And yes, the screwdrivers really do start fighting. Alright, that's enough. We won't torture the tools any further. Now let's take a look at our next purchase, which cost $50. This tool is already rated at 18 volts. It arrived in branded packaging. Let's open it up. Inside, we find paperwork, a charger, a 2.5 amp hour battery, and the screwdriver itself. Unfortunately, we didn't find a carrying case for transportation, even though cheaper models did include one. Overall, the packaging is decent, but the score will be lower than the previous candidate. For packaging and contents, we give it 6 points. Now we really hope that the quality won't let us down. Visually, this screwdriver looks very solid. It feels good in the hand and gives the impression of a truly powerful tool. Even the smell is different, not like a cheap product, but like a new expensive device. The plastic is dense and impact resistant, and there are also metal elements. The screwdriver is fairly heavy, but it shouldn't strain your hand too much. I really like the trigger response. You can precisely select the desired speed and instantly release it. The work light is located at the bottom, and next to it there is a battery charge indicator. All the adjustments are present here, just like on the previous screwdriver. But additionally, there are operating modes, screw driving, drilling, and hammer drilling for brick and concrete. There is no noticeable play anywhere. The build quality is solid, so we give it 9 points. Now let's talk about features. The new features on this screwdriver include the different operating modes, as well as a belt clip for carrying it on your waist, which is quite convenient. For features, we also give it 9 points. Now let's find out the power. This is an 18-volt screwdriver, so expectations are high. We drive a long screw into a log. It goes straight through the wood and fully sinks the screw. The power is excellent, and working with this tool feels very comfortable. For power, we give it 10 out of 10. Now let's check how quickly this screwdriver can drive 10 screws. The video barely needed any speeding up because the tool completed the task in just 21 seconds. For this test, it also gets 10 points. Now let's test the drilling performance of the $50 screwdriver. It drills wood very quickly. When drilling brick, we enable the hammer mode, which really simplifies the process. Just a couple of seconds and the hole is ready. Metal also causes no problems at all. The screwdriver doesn't feel the load and easily drills straight through the metal. All difficulty levels are passed, which means the score here is maximum. Now let's move on to furniture assembly. This tool drives tiny screws at incredible speed, making the assembly process very fast. However, due to its size, there may be difficulties in some tight spaces. For this test, we give it 9 out of 10. Now let's check the battery life. The battery is fully charged. We lock the trigger with a zip tie and wait until the screwdriver stops running. It was already getting dark outside, and I was almost falling asleep to the monotonous sound of the motor when I finally heard it stop. This happened after 1 hour and 25 minutes. No other candidate has shown this level of autonomy so far, so we give it 10 points. The total score for the $50 screwdriver is 73 points. This tool did not disappoint in terms of quality, impressed us with its features, and performed excellently in all the tests. But for the very end, we saved the most interesting and the most expensive option, a screwdriver that cost $100. Now let's figure out what exactly you're paying for here. The box is stylish and minimalistic, made of pleasant to the touch cardboard. First we take out the user manual, the charger, the battery, and of course the screwdriver itself. That's where the package ends. We like the packaging. It even includes foam inserts. For the first parameter, we give it 7 out of 10. And now we move on to evaluating the quality. The design of this screwdriver was clearly given a lot of attention. It looks really cool. This is already a 20-volt model, but in terms of size and weight, it's smaller than the previous candidate. Thanks to good weight distribution, this tool won't strain your hand. The body is made of very pleasant and durable plastic, and nothing rattles or wobbles anywhere. There are anti-slip inserts, so the screwdriver sits comfortably in the hand. The trigger is very sensitive and works exactly as it should. There is a bright work light and of course a battery charge indicator. Reverse mode, torque adjustment, and speed selection are all present here. However, aside from drilling, we didn't find any additional operating modes. There is also a belt hook for carrying the tool. We hope we managed to convey the quality of this screwdriver through the camera. We give it 10 points since no defects were found. We initially thought that the features would be limited to standard adjustments only, but near the work light, we noticed a separate button. This is a special safety function designed to prevent injuries. When the bit jams during operation, the tool automatically shuts off thanks to a built-in gyroscope. As you can see, the finger stays on the trigger. The screwdriver does this on its own. We've never seen anything like this before, so for features, we give it 9 points. Now let's see how the most expensive screwdriver performs in the power test. We drive a long screw into a piece of hard wood. The screwdriver does this very smoothly and very quickly. For power, this is clearly 10 points. Now let's move on to the speed test. This screwdriver handled 10 screws in just 19 seconds. For speed, we give it 10 out of 10. Now we secure a drill bit in the chuck and begin drilling. It drills wood very easily. There were no difficulties with brick either. With a metal profile, there were also no problems. The hole was made without effort. In drilling, this screwdriver showed excellent results, so we rate this parameter at 10 points. In everyday use, this screwdriver also left only positive impressions. Furniture assembly felt like an extremely easy task for it. For real-world use, we also give it 10 points. Now let's check the battery life. The battery is fully charged. We lock the trigger and see how long it lasts. After almost 20 minutes, the battery is fully drained. Apparently, due to the higher voltage and smaller battery capacity, we get this result. Still, the charge should be enough for a full day of work. For autonomy, we give it 7 points. The total score is also 73 points, which means we have a tie in this battle. We were very satisfied with the $100 screwdriver as well, even though it scored the same number of points as the previous candidate. It lacks different operating modes, and we would like to see a higher capacity battery, so first place goes to both the $50 and $100 screwdrivers. Second place is taken by the $25 model. Third place goes to the $10 screwdriver. The remaining tools can also be useful in certain situations. Which screwdriver would you most want to buy? I also recommend checking out this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you soon!